Hello and welcome to the University of Kent. Thank you for joining us this evening in tonight's In Conversation. Tonight's set to be a fantastic evening, but it doesn't end there. Because you've got a ticket, you're supporting students like me through the Kent Opportunity Fund. I'm currently in the second year of my PhD and one of the scholars looking at the relationship between sleep and delirium in people over the age of 70 who are about to have a hip or knee replacement surgery. Without your support, I'd not be here today, so thank you. I'd like to welcome to the stage the Chancellor of the University, Gavin Esler, and his guest, Dame Diana Rigg DBE.
Hello, good evening, and I'm glad you've all managed to pass the test, which was just to get here through the traffic, which wasn't so good tonight. Welcome to the latest in our series of In Conversation. And our guest tonight is quite simply a woman for all seasons. You may know her from Game of Thrones, or perhaps it's from The Avengers, or as the wife of James Bond, I think the only on-screen wife of James Bond, in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, or for her many roles on TV and film. Please will you welcome Diana Rigg.
Thank you.
Well, that went well.
It did.
Could we begin where you began, in Doncaster?
Yes.
How did you go from Doncaster to RADA to the person that we know?
I didn't spend long in Doncaster. I was there because my father's family came from there. We then moved to Leeds, and I went to a Moravian school just outside Leeds. Moravians are of a Quaker mind, and so it was a very, very strict school. But in the school was one teacher, and an awful lot of actors and actresses are inspired by a single teacher. The same story emerges all the time, and this woman was called Sylvia Greenwood, and she introduced me to poetry and to the magic of words, and gave me the confidence to stand up and say a poem, and from then she suggested that I write to RADA for an audition, which is what I did, and I got into RADA. My father couldn't afford the fees to RADA, so then she wrote to the Leeds Council, and in those days the council gave, God, miracle of miracles, they gave scholarships. And I went to the town hall. I remember walking through miles of flooring to a table at the far end with a lot of very serious old men who said, "What makes you think you could be an actress then?" And I don't know, I must have found the words because they found the money, and thank God to them.
But, making the leap to RADA is it's very tough to get into. You must have had some kind of a spark, as well as the inspiration from the teacher. Was there something that made you, yes, I'm a performer, I can do it? No?
I never actually, I've never had a huge amount of ambition, and I know this sounds ridiculous for somebody who's done what I've done. I've never, ever thought, oh, I've got to get there, ever. In fact, I've got a friend whom I've known for 50 years, and I turned to him once and said, "Dad, have I been ambitious?" And he said, "No, you've always been grateful." Well, I have. Grateful for the joy of the profession that I found myself in, and grateful for all the sort of jobs that happened along the way, starting with rep in Scarborough, I think it was.
How important do you think is training to the longevity of a career?
Absolutely essential. And not just the training, but the continuation. You have to work on yourself all the time. And I remember doing Phaedra. Now, Phaedra was a great challenge because there were, A5 speeches, one after the other. Amazing. And it demanded the most astonishing breath control, and also it demanded a huge voice. You had, the range of your voice had to be huge. And there were 4 lines in the part. An old actress called Barbara Jefford was playing my maid. She'd played Phaedra. So there was a sort of tension on stage, between us. Of course there was. It always happens. But one day I'd set myself the challenge of saying these 4 lines on one breath. It was right at the end of a speech, so you really had to husband your breath. And I'd set myself this challenge, and we were on tour in Malvern, I think it was, and I achieved it. And as we got off stage, she turned to me and said, "Well done." She'd set herself the same challenge. And that's what happens when people play the same part. You discover the same challenges, you discover the same troughs, and that's what the wonderful thing about the sharing that goes on in my profession.
Were you prepared for the fame which came with being Mrs. Peel?
No.
Because it was extraordinary, wasn't it?
And I know it sounds terrible to turn your back on the gift of fame when it is a gift, because suddenly you're well known all over the world. But I found it such an intrusion, and to be just a sex symbol was. I come from Yorkshire. I'll tell a story along the way. I was playing Cordelia in King Lear. Paul Schofield was doing Lear, and we were playing in Paris, the Paris Olympia. I mean, Le Tout Paris were there. And we took our curtain. I was the junior member, so I was right at the top of the building in a very scrubby dressing room. I think people had sort of dried their hands on the curtains. Anyway, I remember at the curtain call, this extraordinary golden creature about four tiers back from the stage, and the stage light just sort of reflected on her, and she had this aureole of golden hair. She had a gold lame coat, and was just, it was the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen. My eyes riveted on her. The curtain came down, we all went to our dressing rooms, and we were bidden to the British ambassadors for a soirée. And I was wondering how I was going to get there, and I'd got my one best dress, not very grand, hanging in the corner there. And there was a knock on the door, and I opened the door, and there was this golden creature. It was Marlene Dietrich. And she said, "I've come to take you to the British ambassadors." I promise you I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. She said, "I will help you dress." And so she unzipped my leather costume, and I was standing there, my bra and pants. She said, "Your body is beautiful. You don't need underwear." I went, "Not even a bra?" No. So she zipped me into my dress, and I went to the British ambassadors in her chauffeur-driven car. I was sort of like this all the time. So, I mean, any person of that age nowadays wouldn't be like that. You are looking at somebody who, dates back a very, very long way, and things have changed so hugely.
But I suspect having that contact with Marlene Dietrich may have prepared you for being regarded as a sex symbol as Mrs. Peel.
Not really, no, because it's very invasive. I didn't deal with my mail because I couldn't. I didn't have enough time. So I used to give it to my mother, who used to write... She used to write back to them and say, "My daughter's far too old for you." Or things like, "You need a good run round the block."
Or a cold shower.
Or a cold shower.
Now, I read, this could be not true, I don't know, but I read that you were paid considerably less than Patrick Macnee.
Oh, yes, a lot. That wasn't his fault.
No.
No, that was my agent who thought this girl isn't going to go very far. Let's sell her cheap. But I then I made a bit of a fuss about it, and then I got this a reputation for being mercenary, which I wasn't at all. I mean, I was in fact getting less than the cameraman. So
was that your agent, or was that
No,
just
my
the way
agent.
things
No,
were
no,
because
my
you were a
agent.
woman and
No.
you weren't paid as much?
No, it was just my agent, really. He wasn't my agent for very long.
Somehow I thought that might be a possibility. So it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't just that women were paid less for doing similar kind of work. Where do you, because...
I wasn't aware of that, and certainly not on stage. You know, on stage it doesn't work that way.
Right. And when you made that leap, though, to television from... Or is it a leap? I don't know. You were in the stage, and then you became Mrs. James Bond. I mean, did the fame annoy you, or was it just something that you just put up with as part of the job, or
no?
Or what?
Well, you're vaguely split, because on the one hand you realise that it is important to be known. For example, one of the first things I did after I did The Avengers was go back to the Royal Shakespeare Company and do Twelfth Night, because I could put bums on seats. And so you can put it to use. And I think that is so important.
Do you think that you brought people into the theatre who wouldn't normally get Twelfth Night Shakespeare? Not for me.
I don't know.
But
I
want to see Diana Rigg.
I don't know. And certainly maybe younger people. But also... I was one of the first people who crossed over to television. And I remember Peter Hall saying, you know, she's going to waste herself on stupid films and television. Because television wasn't regarded as highly as it is now. It was simply regarded as another stream of entertainment. Now it has become hugely powerful. But it wasn't in those days. And I was considered to be slumming it. To be doing television.
That brings us on neatly to Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I mean, which is going from one cult series, which is The Avengers, to Game of Thrones, extraordinary. I mean, were you surprised? Are you surprised at how popular that has become?
Yes. Well, I have to say I don't watch it. And I haven't read the book either. I think there are some students here who know all about it, and you will put me to shame, because if you ask me certain questions, I will not be able to answer.
Because we're hoping for some really awkward questions in a minute. See what happens. Why do you think it's just done it? I mean, it just hits a chord with so many people.
I don't know enough about that sort of entertainment. I really don't.
Mm-hmm. So it's a surprise. Is it fun to do for you?
Yeah, it's great. Very good scenes they write. I mean, really lovely, meaty scenes, and so it's fun to do.
And you travel, because I was asking you earlier when we were in the green room. So we all think it's shot in Northern Ireland, but not quite.
Well, the interiors are in Northern Ireland, Iceland for the cold part, and Spain or Dubrovnik for the heaties, hots. In a manner of speaking. Well, for those of you who watched it, you know that they're around.
We're going to put the lights up in a minute and ask questions from the audience, and we'll get microphones to you. But there's quite a few that have already come in and emailed, and there's some lovely ones. So I just want to ask you this one. How has it been working with your daughter? Do you have to stop yourself from giving her advice on set?
Oh, God, yes. I can't say a word. I'm very right too. It's fun, but we make each other laugh, so it sort of gets really difficult. Because you know, it happened. It's known as corpsing on stage. I don't quite know why. Laughter like died or something like that. But anyway, I'm a great corpser, and I can go off at the drop of anything. And so with Rachie together, we do tend to corpse.
Is that... I have heard from somebody else that the rule of thumb is the more fun you have making it, the less good it's going to be.
Yes.
Is that true? Oh.
Was that me or you?
I think it was you.
Oh, it's there. Yeah, I think that's what they say. But I I think in comedy it doesn't apply. I think what they're talking about is if you're really, really wallowing in drama and enjoying it. I remember hearing Sarah Bernhardt, a recording of Sarah Bernhardt in Phèdre, and it was very French and very sort of Floriat, you know, all that was going on. She was really enjoying it. And you knew that the audience were probably fast asleep.
Because it becomes indulgent and about you rather than about the relationship. Other than yourself, who's your favourite Bond girl?
Oh, Shirley Eaton. Is she still around?
She may be in the audience for all I know. Why?
Ursula Andress.
Ursula Andress.
Oh, she was beautiful.
In fact, they replicated that scene, didn't they? The one from when she gets out of the water. They did it in many years later in another Bond film. Yeah. As a kind of...
I don't watch it anymore, I have to say. It's I don't know, run out of steam for me.
I see. Thinking about your career in TV, do you think audiences in general have changed from The Avenger to Game of Thrones, perhaps in terms of their devotion to the series, or were Avengers fans as passionate as Games of Thrones fans?
Do you know, I couldn't answer that, really. I'd have to go back and sort of look at letters and all that kind of stuff. This is me name-dropping again, but I was in my dressing room at the National Theatre, and it was a matinee, and it was between shows, and there was a knock on the door, and this woman came towards me. She was very bony and hair scraped back and bronzed, and she had mandarin collar, and she was dressed in khaki, and the arm was out, and it was very sinewy, and it was Catherine Hepburn. And she walked across and she said, "Spencer loved you." Well, that's all I need to know about me and the Avengers.
It's all you need to know about audiences,
Absolutely,
isn't it? If Spencer Tracy loved you, that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah.
A couple of other quick... Oh, I can tell you the answer to this before you even say it. Do you subscribe to services like Netflix or Amazon Prime?
No.
Thank you. The Guardian Style Guide uses the term actor to refer to both males and females. What do you think about this, and what do you think of the word actress?
I love our language. I just love our language. We've got the richest language in the world, and I love it to be precise, and I am an actress.
Right. I'm so glad you said that, as indeed it clearly is.
I ain't got balls.
I'm not sure about that, but in a different way. As I say, I will throw it open to questions from the audience in a moment, because we are a bit in the outer darkness, so we'll bring the lights up. But what's the proudest moment in your career? Many proud moments, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think it had a long journey. It's the night we opened Medea on Broadway. And it had started so small at the Almeida, and then none of the West End producers had taken it up. So it then lay in abeyance for, I think it was about a year. And then Jonathan Kent, who was the director, and myself thought, let's resurrect it. So we got a producer and resurrected it. We toured England. And then we went into the West End, and the audiences grew and grew and grew and grew. And then we were invited to take it to Broadway. And that's how theatre should be. We paid our dues in England, and we nurtured audiences. They grew. I remember we were playing Newcastle, and there was hardly anybody in the house to begin with. The end of the week that we were playing, we were full. So we knew we were on track. And when we opened in Broadway, I pleaded with the producers to put Euripides up in lights. Can you imagine, 2,000 years after the play's written, Euripides is on Broadway? And they refused. And then I said, I'll pay. And they still refused, because they said, it'll turn people away. But anyway, we opened, and we were a smash hit. And I told you this because it's not pride, it's just the best of theatre when it's right, has that kind of projection, that kind of journey, and it all felt right, and pride had nothing to do with it. Hard work, a lot.
I'm told when Donald Trump finally becomes president, Euripides will be all over the place, so there'll be plenty of it, plenty of that. But that leads on to another question about audiences. Do you feel the instant feedback from an audience when you're on stage that you don't get on film in the same way?
Very much so. I mean, I think, I don't know if audiences are aware of it, but actors certainly are aware of the feeling of an audience nightly. And at the risk of sounding incredibly pompous, I think it's a communion. When you go to a theatre, you lend your belief to us, and it is our duty to answer your belief as fully and as truly as possible. Just that.
Do you ever get the opposite? You're there and you're thinking, it's not, for one reason or another, it's not going the way I want it.
Yes.
And how is that? Is it
misery?
Yeah. Wrenching.
Yeah, you just want to go home and climb under the duvet.
But then there's always the next night.
That's the point. There's always another audience, and people often ask me and say, how do you do it night in, night out, or 2 on Wednesdays, 2 on Saturdays? It's because of you. You're different. And you pull something out of us each night, which we might not know was there. And you can be sort of like this, show me. And that's a challenge too. It can be really, really cold when you first step out on stage and the audience isn't with you. Something might have happened. They might have had to, wait in a queue to get their tickets, wait in a rain for a bus. Audiences do change. But it's lovely, lovely winning you round, and it's lovely when we've won you round.
In that sense, do you surprise yourself sometimes? In other words, does somehow the feedback from the audience, the sense of the occasion, does that make you better than you thought you were going to be?
Oh, yes. It pulls something out of you, very much so.
That must be an extraordinary feeling, though,
well,
isn't it?
Really, yes, it is. It really is. And you must never mistake the reasons why it exists, because it's that communion. I swear it's that communion.
Mm. That's quite a humble thing to say, actually. You are a very big star. People see you on the stage. I know, but you're actually saying something quite humble, which is, it's not just about you.
No, it isn't. Never. Words. We deal with texts. I've been so lucky. I've played 2 Tom Stoppard plays. David Hare. I did Mother Courage. He did it in Yorkshire, which made it sort of easier in a way. I've been so lucky with the playwrights and the directors that I worked with, but it always comes down to what's on the page, always.
Let's bring the lights up and have some questions from the audience, because it's your fault if it all goes wrong now. From what we've just said. There's a gentleman down the front. We'll just wait for a second, if you wouldn't mind, sir, just till we get the microphone to you.
Good evening. Do you have I think you might have just answered it actually, but do you have a first love for either TV, film or stage? And if I may be so cheeky, any Game of Thrones spoilers?
Any Game of Thrones stories? Stage is my favourite. It really is. I'm not allowed to tell Game of Thrones stories. No, they make you sign a confidentiality agreement and all that. And you get something called slides every day when you go to the studio. And that's the scene that you're about to play in. And your name is stamped on it. You sign for it when they hand it over to you. And you have to hand it back at the end of the day in case you sell it to somebody.
Right, so we're not going to get very far on that line of questioning. Good try, sir, though. Who's next?
Nobody?
Yes, the lady down the front.
Thank you. Hello, Diana. I'm so excited to see you.
Thank you.
You've been an icon of mine all my life.
Thank you.
And I just, first of all, comment on my admiration for you, but my question, in the 60s, and you've talked quite a bit about the Avengers, and up until the Avengers, the female role in those sorts of genre was sort of silly little bimbos. And I think you were probably the first woman to fight back with a brain. Were you aware of breaking new ground in that area?
Do you know, I really do wish I could say I was. But I wasn't. I stepped into Honor Blackman's shoes. Honor Blackman was the first. I forget what she was called. Anyway, I played her part. But the irony, the real irony, is that the Avengers started out as two men. It was Patrick Macnee and another actor. And the actor dropped away at the very last minute, and they put Honor in, and they didn't change the script. So she was doing all those things that men do. And these gentlemen, who are no longer with us, couldn't believe their luck. Because suddenly they had, female icons, and they were going, how did it happen? They didn't have a clue. But that's really, so I can take no credit at all, but all I can say is, thank you very much, because it was a wonderful part, and Patrick was adorable to work with. And I think it came through that we really did love each other. No sex, but we loved each other.
It did, actually, in the sense, there's something about that, there was great chemistry there.
Yeah, and
somehow,
I think it helps
indefinable.
if you've got mutual respect. And we did have that.
Yes, there's somebody there, and somebody up the back, too. If there's anybody in the middle at the back in the outer darkness, do just sort of wave a bit, because it's a little bit more difficult to see you. Yes?
Okay. Hello. You talked a bit about words and text and how important that is, and I think words are amazing, basically. So I was wondering if you have a favourite play or a favourite playwright?
A favourite play. You see, it's unfortunate, but Shakespeare. And it's a cliche, I know. And my favourite play is King Lear, because it's the greatest play. I've been in 3 productions. I walked on with Charles Laughton. That's how long ago. I played Cordelia to Paul Schofield, and I played Regan to Olivier. So I know it, and God, I love it.
Do you have any thoughts about Glenda Jackson as King Lear? Maybe you haven't seen. I haven't seen Glenda Jackson as King Lear. It's had very fine reviews, but I just wondered what your thoughts are about a woman playing a part clearly written for a man.
I think maybe I should answer that if I'd seen it. Do you know what I mean? And you really can't comment until.
But I mean, all right, but
because the women, there's a Julius Caesar. There's an all-woman Julius Caesar, and this is. I mean, I think it's happening. It's a symptom of the march of women, isn't it? Basically.
Is it, or is it a gimmick?
I don't know. I mean, the audience have to make up their minds about it. Somebody's hissing.
I think they're hissing me,
Is
not
that
you.
because I haven't come down on the feminist side? Bad luck.
Who hissed?
I apologise for hissing. That maybe wasn't very articulate, given the beautiful words of Diana. But no, I only hissed as a guttural reaction to the idea that it was gimmicky to have women acting interesting and serious roles.
You said that.
No, it was well, of course I did. No, it's not gimmicky to have women acting in serious roles, but I was asked, is it a gimmick to have a woman playing King Lear, which is clearly a man? There we are. Some more thoughts?
We need a joke. I'll tell you about something that happened to me when I was very, very young. I was walking on in this play called Ondine by Girardot. Leslie Caron was in it, and she was married to Peter Hall, which was the only reason she was in it, because...
Because?
Because. Anyway, I was playing an Ondine. Oh, very unfortunate. I had no lines, but the costume was deeply, deeply unfortunate. I had a dressing room, of course, I was very junior, at the top of the theatre, and I had an all-over thing, but there were fins at the bottom, and I had shell, and it zipped up the back, and I had a floppy hat with shells and seaweed round it. And when I went up to my dressing room, I had to go. And when I came down from my dressing room, I had no. And I didn't have any scene at all, but what I had to do, the story of Ondine is she's a mermaid who comes up out of the sea, falls in love with the prince, takes human form, but in the end, tragedy of tragedies, she has to go back into the sea again. Not if it's Leslie Caron playing Ondine. No tragedy there, believe you me. Anyway, I'm being rude. So I, with another friend of mine, Wendy, we had to lure the prince, who had his back to the audience. He was standing down. We were up, on a balcony. And he was played by Richard Johnson, who was wildly handsome and very naughty. So we had to try and lure him. So we were going like this out of the window to and he was looking at us and pulling the sort of face to say, "Are you out of your mind?" So of course I started laughing. And I laughed every single night. And eventually I was called to Miss Caron's dressing room. And she said, "Diana, I hear you every night. You are laughing." And I said, "I'm sorry, Miss Caron, I'm really sorry. It's a weakness of mine." And she said, I had that weakness. I killed myself. Think of something sad. Think of being fired.
Yes. And I take it that had the desired effect, at least her desired
Kind of,
effect.
sort of.
Some more thoughts? Yes, the gentleman at the back, and then there's a lady down here.
Thank you. Dame Diana, thank you so much for coming this evening. It's great listening to you. I just wanted to ask you, you were in two of my all-time favourite films, and so I was hoping you could share your recollections of The Assassination Bureau, particularly Oliver Reed, who you were wonderful with, and On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Okay, well, I can't tell you much about the Assassination Bureau, except that I met an accountant at a cocktail party years after I'd made it, and he said, "I put a lot of money into that film and it lost." Doesn't help, does it? And then On Her Majesty's Secret Service, well, I'd never been in such a huge production before. I mean, it really was astonishing. They flew me to Paris for the collections to choose a fur coat. Nice. They sent up from we were in, I can't remember the village, but halfway up a mountain anyway, and they sent down to Interlaken for a watchmaker for me to try on a watch that I just glanced at once, and which they gave me. I mean, the plenitude of these sort of films, coming from the Royal Shakespeare Company, I was completely gobsmacked, it was terrific. Of course, we had our problems with the leading man, but there you go. I had my watch and my fur coat.
What did you think of The Leading Man, sir, since it's one of your favourite films?
Thank you. Well, I might be in a minority, but to me, George Lazenby and Timothy Dalton are my two favourite Bonds. I absolutely love him.
I think that lady just hissed again over there.
It's a free country, you're allowed to be wrong.
And Idris Elba for the next one?
Why not?
Idris Elba?
Why not?
great actor. There was a lady down here, yes. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was really interested in asking about what it was like to work with Peter Brook in 1962 on bringing back King Lear again, because obviously at the time he was really big and kind of broke out in terms of theatre, bringing forward ideas from like Grotowski and Arto, and I was quite interested.
It was a wonderful production. It was quite extraordinary. He's a very chilly man, indeed.
I think that's, I'm not going to be indiscreet kind of look, is that?
It was. I decided not to be indiscreet. I'm
Oh, go
so
on.
tempted. Well, you see, I was very young. Practically untouched by human hand. And I used to wear something called number 9 on my lips, playing Cordelia. And I was again at the top of the thing. And he used to come up to give me notes, and I could hear him coming up the stairs, and I'd go with this number 9. And he'd stand behind me, give me notes into the mirror, tip my head up, kiss me, lean forward, and grab a tissue, take the number 9 off his lips, and walk out. Nearly every night. Nowadays, of course, you know, he'd be sued, wouldn't he? Yeah. But I was too young and too frightened and too everything. But he did do a wonderful production, absolutely wonderful. So possibly there are penalties to be paid when you're directed by a very good director.
I was wondering what noun was going to follow that, to be quite honest. But do you recall, maybe not every production you've been in, but you recall with great affection, I mean, that is perhaps not quite an affectionate story, but you seem to recall so much of these great shows, performances, scripts.
I do. I'm very, very, very lucky, and I do remember when I was young, a walk-on, total walk-on, my first season at Stratford. You're not going to believe this. Paul Robeson was playing King Lear. No, what am I talking about? Othello. Sam Wanamaker was Iago. Mary Ure, whom you won't know, probably the older amongst you will know. She married Robert Shaw. She was very beautiful. She was Desdemona. Albert Finney was in the company. Peter O'Toole was in the company. Olivier was playing Coriolanus. Dame Edith Evans was playing Volumnia. In fact, I mean, Olivier, I shall never forget, he was so glamorous. I mean, my God. And he had I don't know why that keeps happening.
No, yeah.
He had a quick change room off the stage, which had the biggest bottle of Mitsuko perfume in it you have ever seen. It was that big. And we used to walk past it and go, it's 2 years' wages. In liquid. Anyway, I was standing off stage one evening, and he'd had a battle on stage, and it had obviously gone very wrong. I was standing with my friend Mabel, both of us deeply humble, dressed in rags, and he threw the sword into the corner, and then he saw Mabel and I standing there, and he went, "Oh, ladies," he's very rude word followed, and he said, "Oh, ladies, forgive me," and my friend Mabel, who was madly in love with him, said, "Oh, shit, I don't care."
Some more thoughts from the... Yes, this right at the back.
I'm just wondering, Dame Diana, if there's any plays that you have always wanted the chance to do and still would like to.
Yeah, well, I can't now, but you know, I never ever did Catherine in Taming of the Shrew, and I'd so love to have done it. Instead of which, I played Bianca, and Vanessa played Catherine, and it was a wonderful production. It really was such fun. And nowadays people go, oh, it's kind of, you know, Petruchio, and he treats her badly and all that kind of stuff. But it's really about two people finding each other and eventually falling in love. And I love it. But it's too late now. But I understudied Vanessa, and I don't know if any of you... I'm of an age now. Betty Davis said, "Old age ain't for sissies." And she's so true. But I remember the fie, I knit that threatening, unkind brow. And I had an operation recently, and I said to the anaesthetist, I've got this Shakespeare speech of Catherine's, which I can remember. I'm going to go into it as you put me under anaesthetic, and I expect to be saying it when I come out.
Yes, there was somebody in the middle.
My question, similar to the gentleman in that direction, my favourite Bond is also on Her Majesty's Secret Service. I think partly, Diana, because of your powerful female character that you played in that role. And as the lady,
Tracy.
Yeah, Tracy, Teresa. As the lady at the front said, is similar to your work in the Avengers. Thinking about the fact that you were one of the first, in the Bond film, your character saved Bond. It was the Bond girl that saved the man. And looking at maybe the career of, say, your daughter and other actresses that are around at the moment, do you feel there are still those strong female parts out there, or do you feel in a way we've sort of taken a step back in that respect?
I think the parts are getting stronger. I think there's more recognition now that there's a huge market for parts, strong women. And people are writing it. Certainly on television they are, definitely. I mean, I think they're a bit slow on film to catch up, but television is steaming ahead with really good parts for women.
There have been quite a few Hollywood movies in the last couple of years which have tried to address that. It seems there's quite a few.
It's all about market.
Seems a bit odd if you ignore 50% of your market by not doing that.
I know.
Hello. I just have a question on a drama point of view, really, and this is going to be quite difficult to answer because you've had so many fantastic parts, but when you get one that you really love, you really get into it, and I suppose, is there one that really sticks out to you as your favourite part you have ever played?
That I've ever played? Did you... was that the question? Okay. I think it was Medea. I mean, it was so tough, but the rewards, it was just extraordinary. And again, you play a very large part because I don't know how many years it is since I did it, but people, and certainly when I'm in New York, people say, "I saw you as Medea." I have a belief that theatre imprints deeper than film or television, and that it stays with people, and that is the power of theatre, and that is the wonder of theatre, and that actually in the end is our great, you give us, to have remembered that for so many years touches me deeply.
But from the audience, speaking as an audience member, the thing that you get from live theatre you don't get from anywhere else is this belief that this person on the stage is speaking to me, and tomorrow it will all be gone, it will be different. I will have the memory of that, and that's why it's so extraordinary. Do you think, though, that audiences have changed a bit? I mean, there is, I think it was Imelda Staunton was saying recently, people shouldn't eat in the theatre, and I certainly know from personal experience, there have been people who tweet on the theatre or do something. They're not paying the same degree of respect, it seems to me, to what's going on the stage that they perhaps should have done or did in the past.
Yeah, I think that's true. I also think television has a lot to answer for, and that they equate an awful lot of, going to the theatre. They've got their popcorn, goodness sake. There is nothing worse, I don't know if you're with me, than sitting next to somebody eating crisps. You can hear every crunch, I could kill them. I think they shouldn't sell food in the theatre. I really don't. A drink, yes, but when it comes to sort of popcorn, and it's all about making money. They should not do it.
I sat next to somebody last year who was eating a tuna sandwich. Now, it didn't make a noise, but anyway.
Awful.
So, there's a lady over there.
Hello, Diana. Lovely to see you this evening. I never thought I would like or even get to see Game of Thrones, but I have, and I'm an older person and I remember you in the past. But you were working with a fantastic group of actors, I think, in Game of Thrones. Well, some wonderful English female actresses. How do you, do you find that you're like a mentor or a bit like a mother to them? And is there any of them that you think will be able to take on your mantle as, you know, one of our premier dames of the theatre?
Well, only if they ask. I mean, I wouldn't dream of being anything or doing or saying anything at all. It's very hard. I was talking to Gavin about it before we came out. An awful lot of those kids haven't done the training. And I grieve for that, because they have reached a sort of status, and where are they going to go from there unless they've done some training? But the other thing, the good thing about Game of Thrones is that they employ British actors for the most part. And do you know why? Because we're grateful, we're cheap, and we arrive on set knowing our lines, and we're never late. And it's because we're trained. And that's why they use us, and thank God for it.
Do you think right at the start of our conversation, you talked about RADA, Leeds Council, and all that, which seems, Leeds Council funding a young woman to go off to RADA seems like a different planet.
Amazing.
But does that cut down opportunities? You've seen a lot in the press about, so many old Etonians who become actors because they come from a degree of privilege. Is that true or not?
That's rubbish. And I do hate it when actors moan. They're saying, oh, all the toffs are getting the parts. Well, no, it's not true. I've been around a very long time, and I remember when it was only, toffs were the last people to get the parts in the early 60s. It was people who spoke with an accent. So it's cyclical,
But there is a money, the Michael Caine's, the Bob Hoskins, and the 60s, exactly. But there is also a money element into it as well, isn't it? Because it is a risk you have to take. If you're going to have a long career, you have to spend some money to go to RADA or whatever, as well as be talented.
Oh, of course, but
get it from somewhere.
When I was at RADA, I used to leave RADA, and I used to go to a coffee shop off Cambridge Circus. Hanway Street it was. All the Greek sailors used to go there. And so there were a lot of tarts around. And they used to try and trip me up as I went by carrying the coffee. And I used to work there from 5:30 until 11:30. I used to catch the last tube home to Clapham South. Not a glamorous life.
But if you had to advise somebody, a young person, wanting a career, determined to make it on the stage in particular, how would you say to them they should think about the career and think about, not just the flash in the pan, the TV series that suddenly makes them a face that's well known? Have you got any thoughts as to what they should do, how they should go about it?
I'd say, buy as many cheap seats as you can and go and see performances, because I did that when I was a student, and certain performances are engraved. Read as much as possible. I don't necessarily mean plays. I mean read good literature. If you're actually not in anything, I think it's very good if you could possibly a group of you get together and do readings and discuss plays. You've got to keep those juices flowing. And I do know that the jobs are so few and far between, and I grieve about it. Because unless the young have a strong foothold in the truest part of theatre, which is practicing it, they're going to be so bemused, they're going to go astray, they're going to get lost. I think if groups can get together, young people, actors and actresses interested, and of course there are clubs in London, there's the Arts Theatre, the Actors Centre, which is terribly important, Go there. Never lose sight of this being your instrument. And you've got to play on it as often as a pianist would play on a piano. You've got to.
That is very interesting advice. Thank you. I think we've got time for about one or two more questions. So there's a gentleman over there. And was there somebody? There is somebody at the back, at the very, very back in the middle as well.
Hello. My question is about personality-wise and how that affects your career. You seem to be very outspoken, but has that ever gotten you into trouble in your roles?
Peter Hall said I was the rudest walk-on he'd ever come across. Because I couldn't do sycophancy, I simply couldn't. Anyway, personality, you have to subsume your personality into a part. You must. But I had such an interesting discussion, and here's another name drop. Harvard University was giving Arthur Miller a prize, and I was along for the evening, and we were both there very early. So, of course, I suggested we went and had a drink, which we did. And I was able to ask him questions about his work. He was incredibly generous. And one of the questions I asked him is, you've seen your plays down the years performed by succeeding generations. What's the difference? What has been different now to them then? And he said, personality. And he meant it as not a compliment. People were bringing their personality to the play. They weren't prepared to subsume, which is what you've got to do in order to serve the play, of course. And it was I found that absolutely fascinating. He'd spotted it.
I was just thinking, as you've been talking tonight, if subsuming your personality to do justice to the play also makes you a more empathetic person.
Of course.
Because you have to change
of
for every performance.
And when you... Sarah Bernhardt said, I put a part in front of me and see if it is in nature, and if it is, then I know it can be played, which is such a fascinating truism. But what you've got to do also is measure the distance between yourself and that part and fill it. And as a result, you've got to know a great deal about yourself. I mean, I do think that some don't necessarily measure up, but most actors and actresses have a profound sense of the truth of themselves. I mean, if they don't, then they're lost.
Final question from whoever it was at the back. I'm sorry, I've lost sight of you.
I was just wondering, if you weren't an actress, what do you think you would be, and what did you want to be when you were younger?
Oh, so now, how old are you?
13.
Do you know what you want to do?
I want to be an actress.
Good. And I wish you very much luck.
Thanks.
I always wanted to be an actress. And I think you're very blessed. I think to know what you want to do at 13, which is what I knew I wanted to do at 13, means that you have a goal in life and you have a purpose. An awful lot of your contemporaries, I suspect, don't know what they want to do. And you say, I don't know. But you know, and therefore you will achieve it. And I wish you the best of luck.
And just a final question from me. What's the funniest thing or daftest thing that's ever happened to you?
Oh, Struth, what a question.
Apart from tonight, obviously.
The daftest thing, I think the daftest thing I ever did was to get my kit off in Abelard and Eloise. Keith Michel and I did it, the play. And it was absolutely, the director said, it was very necessary for the play, and, they find their kind of sensuality, and so therefore Keith came on from one side of the stage and me from the other, and we were both naked, and it was so cold. We took it to Broadway, and I got the worst notice of my life as a result of this scene. A critic wrote of me, Diana Rigg is built like a brick mausoleum with insufficient flying buttresses. I survived.
I'm not sure quite how to follow your flying buttresses.
No way you can
I
follow.
can't. I think I would just like to thank you. It has been a great privilege, a great honour, and great fun to meet one of my favourite actresses ever, Diana Rigg. Thank you very much. And thank you. As we shuffle off, I'd like to thank all of you too for coming here, because your contributions...
Without you, where would we be?
Well, it would be a lonely conversation, but it'd still be fun. And also, all your contributions tonight come here go to the Kent Opportunities Fund, which helps many of our students. So thank you for that. There also be some buckets somewhere if you want to throw in. As they used to say in Northern Ireland, it could be a silent collection. That means notes. Thank you.